Hey folks, P Reali here coming to you from Ty Ford Studios in Baltimore, and I'm here today to demonstrate this really incredible 12-string guitar that I recently acquired. First off, it is, to the most anybody can identify, a early 1900s Oscar Schmidt built 12-string guitar. It came to me in a kind of funny situation. I have a very good friend named Matt Baker who owns a music store in Falls Church, Virginia. And he put a picture up on Facebook of a bunch of new instruments he had just purchased, including this 12-string. And I saw the picture on Facebook and I called him and said, "Hey, what's that 12-string in the picture?" And he said, "I don't know. I was going to call you to see if you could come identify it." He thought that it might have been a Husupfel, but it's not. And I bought it from him right there. It was in quite a state of disrepair, and there's no label or logo on it. And the story that he told me was that a woman in her 70s walked into his shop with the guitar one day and said, "This was my grandfather's guitar. It's been hanging over my fireplace for the last 50 years. I'd like to sell it. Is it worth anything?" And he gave her some money for it. I gave him a little bit more money for it, and then sent it off to renowned guitar builder, luthier, repairman Todd Cambio in Madison, Wisconsin, and had him restore the guitar. And it was incredibly filthy. And Todd basically took the guitar completely apart, and he actually put a nice little post on Facebook about this guitar. What he did, he took the top off, he took the braces off because there was cracks in the top and the back, and the braces were acting like spreaders, and he re-glued the braces. I'm sorry, he glued the cracks, and then he re-glued the braces. He actually added a brace because, like very early Oscar Schmidt guitars, it only had three braces and the bridge plate. And he cleaned up the finish, which, as you can imagine, having it hang above a fireplace for decades, it had a lot of soot on it. And what he did was he used a degreaser and a cleaner, and then took a very fine piece of sandpaper and sanded off some spots on the finish, because the finish had actually started to bubble up in various places. And you can kind of see here where he knocked that bubbling off and kind of smoothed the finish out and leveled it out. And among the various repairs he did was he built the original bridge was no longer usable and had been screwed through the top. So he removed that, and he removed the bridge plate, and he plugged the holes, put a new bridge plate on. He also took the neck off because the neck needed to be reset. And the fingerboard, strangely enough, had been cut right where the neck meets the body, which apparently many years ago was a way to reset the neck. You just cut the tongue of the fingerboard off and pull the neck off. So he replaced the ebony fretboard. What he managed to do, because he's such a skilled craftsman, was he managed to save the original inlays and reposition them in the guitar. Even he positioned them off axis like they were on the original fretboard. He also had to put new binding on the neck, and the top has new binding, and you can see that he stained the binding to match the lacquer. The back, he replaced a small section of the binding back here, but most of the binding is original. And like many Oscar Schmidt built guitars of the time, it has a pointed neck heel. And this also has the fancy inlay, like it's the lead belly style top inlay around the border. And unusually, this has what is commonly referred to as rope inlay around the sound hole. I'm sure somebody has seen something like this, but I never have. Usually, they would have used one style of binding around the sound hole and the edge of the guitar. And obviously, as you have noticed, this has a very unique pick guard in it, and it is kind of what I would call a patriotic theme, as this is an eagle holding two olive branches, which is very close to the official American Eagle logo, but the official American Eagle logo has olive branches in one talon and arrows in the other, signifying we want peace, but we're prepared for war. So I actually think that's kind of cool that it's just a couple of olive branches. And it's got the 3 stars, one in the middle and one on each side. And I have never seen a pick guard like this on a 12-string. Once again, I'm sure some of the experts out there have, but this is not an uncommon style, as was used a lot in the early 20th century, late 19th century on mandolins. You see a lot of Italian-made mandolins with these fancy pearl inlaid pickguard, and this is actually abalone inlay. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but it's actually got a slight tint of pink and green in the body of the eagle. And then the headstock just has the single star inlay, which could be a continuation of the patriotic theme, or it could be the Stella logo. As we all know, Stella in Greek means star. And when I asked a lot of different people in the vintage guitar community what they thought of it, and it's kind of funny that the majority of them said, I don't know, ask Todd Cambio. I said, oh, well, I'm sending it to him to be restored. And he thought, without a doubt, it's an Oscar Schmidt, based on a couple things, but mainly the fact that the scale length of this guitar is 26.5 inches, and I have it currently tuned down 2 steps to C, and he said that no other maker, including the Italian Luthiers Guild in New York, or any of the Chicago makers, or Hosefeld, ever made anything 26.5 inches long. So he said that pretty much narrows it down to being made in the Oscar Schmidt factory. Now, he thinks it was made before Oscar Schmidt registered the name Stella, which was in 1909. They were producing Stella instruments, or instruments with the Stella name, before that, but he did not register that as the official name until 1909. So his best guess was this was built between 1900 and 1909. According to Neil Harp's wonderful Stella guitar book here, which is, I believe, sadly out of print, he says Stella entered the 12-string market in the early 1910s, 19 teens. So there's a lot of information that I was able to get out of this book about this guitar. Nothing that can definitively say it was built by Oscar Schmidt, other than what I mentioned that Todd said. And it's really fancy in many ways. It's got old growth Adirondack spruce as the top, and a really attractive Cuban mahogany sides and back. And you can tell the Cuban, I was told, the way to distinguish Cuban between African or Central American mahogany is that the Cuban mahogany really has a reddish tint to it, and this guitar really does look red. And obviously some of that is from the yellowing of the lacquer, but it is also definitely the wood. And the neck is also mahogany. And the tuners are original. When Todd was restoring it, he asked me if I wanted to replace the tuners. He said they are original Waverleys, referred to as gear above. He said they work, they don't work great, and there's a couple of the buttons that are a little loose, and it's a little funky to try to get it in tune, but it stays in tune very well. I like the look. It's amazing that the plastic tuner buttons didn't melt or burst into flames and burn this guitar up as it sat over someone's fireplace for 50 years. And I could not be happier with Todd's work. I don't know how he did it. He brought this guitar back to life. Let's see if you can zoom in. There was a crack right here where the guitar probably fell and hit the corner of an end table that he was able to pull out and use cloth tape on the inside and get it to push out. and he did some lacquer touch up there. He did the center seam was coming undone. He re-glued that and did some lacquer touch up over the pick guard and back around here where the bridge was. The bridge was in the wrong place. It had obviously been moved at some point earlier, and you can see some of the scarring from where the original bridge was, and he handmade this replica bridge, which I actually really like because it's got the cutout there, and I love to hook my finger right there and play. It makes it convenient to play. This guitar conforms to the typical Oscar Schmidt grand concert size, which is roughly 14.5 inches across at the lower bout and 10.5 inches across at the upper bout. I actually think this guitar is a little more. It was like 10 and 5/8 and 14 and 5/8, and it's 4 inches deep, and definitely shows a lot of sign of being played. But the finish is all original. He touched up some finish around the neck where he reset the neck. He reset the neck perfectly. This plays like a brand new Gibson Les Paul. It's a pleasure to play. The neck is very wide, but it is not that deep. It's a very sharp V, and it is not as big as I would have thought it would have been. I've played some other Stella 12 strings from the 20s that the necks were massive and actually too big for me to play. And I have it tuned to C right now, 2 steps down, and because this guitar is so light, Todd suggested that I only use light strings, and what I currently have on it is this La Bella set of 7G P12Ms, and it's a standard set, although La Bella strings can be hard to find. It's 12 to 52, and for me and my playing style and what I want to get out of the guitar, they are the perfect match. Todd sent it back to me with some nickel strings on it because he said that's more of an authentic sound, but it lacked the sparkle that I was looking for. So I experimented with several different sets of strings, and I settled on this set of La Bella because I like phosphor bronze, and I like the chiminess and the ring of phosphor bronze. And the tension is not so strong that it's hard to play. Really plays well, and I don't think it could stand heavier strings because there is no truss rod in the neck, and I don't want to risk warping the neck by putting too big strings on it. And I also wanted to tune it up to C. I have another 12-string jumbo model copy of Leadbelly's 12-string that Todd Cambio built for me that I tuned to B, and I have humongous strings on that, and that sounds really big. And believe it or not, this small body guitar with strings, I think that guitar I have 14s to 68s on it. This guitar is almost as loud as the jumbo. It certainly has a different tone, and the only way I can describe the tone, the difference in the tone, is that this guitar sounds like 1910, and it sounds like it came out of Blind Willie McTell's closet. And the guitar that Todd built for me is a beautiful, excellent sounding and playing guitar, but the one thing that no one has really yet been able to figure out is the aging process of wood. Now, a lot of boutique builders are torrefying their woods. They're basically baking their top woods to try to cook some of the moisture out of it, which supposedly increases the tonal properties. This guitar was naturally torrefied for 50 years, hanging over some woman's fireplace. And since it really hasn't been a guitar for 50 years, I think the sound is quite incredible. And I can't wait to hear how it opens up even more as I continue to play it. And I've only had it. He sent it back to me. We're making this tape in September. He sent it back to me July, a couple months ago, and I've already had 4 sets of strings on it because I can't put it down because it sounds so good. I close my eyes and pretend to be Leadbelly or Blind Willie McTell, and it's a lot of fun to play. This is probably the farthest the guitar will ever be from my home. I don't ever plan on taking it to gigs or anything. I take it to a studio to record, but it's kind of fragile, and I had a case that it fit in, but Todd is eventually going to build me a case. He started building cases for his guitars because his case maker went out of business or got bought by somebody else or something like that. And I'm really pleased with it, and I think it's a thing of beauty. It sits on a stand in my living room when I'm not playing. I just kind of stare at it lovingly, and yeah, that's what we do as guitar nerds, right? So, the strap, I wanted to kind of make it authentic. I bought this strap from Folkways Music in Canada. I did actually find a couple of vintage rope guitar straps on eBay, but they were too short because of the long scale of this guitar and the fact that the closer you put it to the neck, the more it gets in the way of your hand. So I like to have the strap connected, a strap like this connected way at the bottom of the guitar, so it's out of the way of your hands. And I also wanted to say a little thing. I've never been much for naming guitars in the way that Willie Nelson named his guitar Trigger, or Keith Richards named his favorite Telecaster Macabre. But because of the unique inlay here on the pickguard and my fondness for 1950s Japanese monster movies, specifically Godzilla, I decided that I would name this guitar Rodan, because to me, the inlay looks like the famous Godzilla monster Rodan, hence the t-shirt that I got on the internet. God knows what we did before we had an internet connection. Couldn't find t-shirts like this. You have to go to Japan to get it. There is actually a Godzilla store in Tokyo in Japan that I have been to many years ago. But so that's it. I just wanted to show off this beautiful instrument and the amazing repair job, restoration job that Todd Cambio did. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask them. I'm going to put this up on several media sites, YouTube, Facebook, what have you, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good day. Thanks.